Uh, my dear students, this is the last units of block 4, that is the summary and critics of the federalisms. This is also very important things when we talking about the summary and critics of the federalisms. Federalisms is a system of governance in which power is constitutionally divided between the central federal governments and the regional, that is called the state and provincial government. Each level of government has its own set of powers and responsibility, allowing for a balance of authority and that accommodate both national unity and regional diversity. Here is some important key features of the federalisms are like the division of powers. Power are distributed between the federal and the state government with some area of overlapping authority. Second important features, that is constitutional framework. A national constitutions typically outline the structures of federalisms, including the constituting the distributions of powers and rights protections. Dual sovereignty, when we talking about the both federals and the state government have sovereignty in their respective domains. This is also very important things. Next is that is the key features of the federalisms, that is bicameral legislature. Often federal systems have a two houses legislature with one houses representing the populations and others representing the state. Next is that is the judicial review. Courts play a crucial role in interpreting the constitutions and resolving disputes between the federal and state governments. Fiscal federalisms, financial relationship, including taxations and revenue sharings, are key to how federal systems operate. This is also very important parts of the summary. Next advantage of the federalisms, that is flexibility. When we're talking about the federals allow different regions to govern in a way that best suit for their local needs and the preference. Checks and balance. The division of power prevents any one level of governments from the becoming too powerful. This is also important check and balance. Protections of minority rights. Federalisms often protects regional or cultural minority by giving them a degree of autonomy. These are very important parts that is called the summary, and in this these are the advantage like the flexibility, check and balance and protections of the minority. In the federal system of governments, federalism often protects regional and cultural minority by giving them a degree of autonomy. There are some kind of the challenges when we're talking about the critics, that is conflicts of authority, that is there is the dispute can arise over which level of governments has the final say in certain area. Inequality between the states, economic and policy differences between states can lead to unequal access to resources and services. Complexity and inefficiency, the need to coordinate between the multiple level of governments can lead to bureaucratics and ineffectiveness. These are the challenges. Next are the trends. When we're talking about the trends, that is centralizations versus decentralizations. The balance, the balance of powers can shift towards either the more federal control or greater state autonomy. Second is that is called cooperative things and cooperative federalisms, increasing collaborations between the federals and state governments on the federal issue. Judicial activisms, court are increasingly involved in resolving federalisms related dispute, influencing the power of balance. These are the important trend, especially in the federalism, centralizations versus decentralizations, cooperative federalisms, and judicial activisms. Next is that is critics of the federalisms often raises concern about the potentials, drawbacks, and challenges associated with the systems. Here are some common criticisms: inefficiency and complexity, bureaucratic overlaps. Federalisms can lead to duplications of efforts and inefficiency due to overlapping responsibility between federal and state governments. Next is that is the called the complex legal systems. The coexistence of the federal and state law can create a complex legal environments leading to confusions and difficulty in the enforcement. These are the important critics of the federalisms. Sometimes bureaucracy are doing the some kind of the overlapping of the works. There is some kind of the complexity in the legal system. These are two important criticisms. In addition to that, there is also some kind of the there is also this some kind of the inequality between regions and disparity in this in the resources. Federalisms can extrapolate inequality between the richer and poorer states or regions or wealthier area may have more resources to provide better services and infrastructures, and that is inconsistent rights and the services. The variations in policy across states can lead to unequal access to the rights and services, creating disparity, educations, healthcare, and the welfares. These are the important parts of these things. Next is conflicts between federal and state governments. When we're talking about these important things, that is jurisdictions disputes. Conflicts can arise over which level of governments has the authority to legislate or enforce certain policy and leading to legal battles and political tensions. A state may resist federal's mandate, especially if they feel that these infringes on their autonomy and do not align with local value or needs. These are the important parts of conflicts between the federal and state governments. Now come to the next part, that is called potentials for fragmentations, regionalisms and divisions. Federalisms can encourage regionalisms where a states or provinces prioritize local interest over national unity, potentially leading to divisions or even secessionist movements, difficulty in national decision making, reading consciousness on the national policy can be more difficult in a federal system as the states may have differentiating priority or perspective. These are very important parts in the we call it protections for the mechanisms. Now come to the next challenges or critics of the federalisms, that is hindrance to the national policy. Slow implementation of national reform. National policy may be solved or diluted by a state level oppositions or need for a state cooperations, making it difficult to implement widespread reforms. Inconsistency in national strategies, federalism can hinder the creation of a coherent national strategy, particularly in the area like the environmental protections and economic policy and public health. This is a also hindrance related to the national policy. Next, that is favoritisms and patronage. Political patronage. Federalism can foster systems of political patronage where federal responses are distributed based on political loyalty rather than need, leading to inefficiency and the corruptions. Next is that is favoritisms in federal grants. There is a risk that federal government may allocate resources in a way that favors certain states or regions rather than based on objective criteria. These are the very important parts of the critics. Next is that is tensions between majority and minority groups. Majority rule at the state levels. In some cases, federalism can allow a state majority to dominate and marginalize minority groups, particularly if a state governments have significant autonomy, inconsistent protections of minority rights. While federal states aim to protect the minority rights, the level of protections can vary between states, potentially leading to discriminations or unequal treatments. These are the important part that is leading towards the tensions between the majority and the minority groups. And when we're talking about the majority rules at the state levels, in some cases, federalisms can allow a state majority to dominate and marginalize minority groups, particularly if the state government have significant autonomy in consistent protections of the minority rights. While federal systems aim to protect minority rights, the level of protections can vary between a state, potentially leading to discriminations or unequal treatments. Next is that is the challenges or critics of the federalism that is called it economic disparity. Economic competitions. Federalisms can lead to economic competitions between a state which may result in a race of the bottoms as a state lower taxes or reduce regulations to attract businesses potentially undermining the public service and worker protections. This is also called critics of the federalism's unequal economic developments. Some regions may lag in the economic developments due to lack of resources or investments, creating a long-term economic disparity within the state. These are the called one of the important critics of the uh, federalisms. I am going to summarize once again. These are the important critics, like the inefficiency and complexity in the bureaucratic setup, overlappings of the overlap, complex legal systems. Next is that is disparity in resources and inconsistent rights and the services, conflict between federal and state government, that is in between the jurisdictions disputes and state resistance, potential for the fragmentations, regionalisms and divisions is also part of the critics of the federalisms. Difficulty in national decision making, reaching consciousness on the national policy can be more difficult in federal systems as a state may have differing priority or perspectives. Next is that is called the slow implementations of national reforms. National policy may be solved or diluted by a state level oppositions or need for a state cooperations, making it difficult to implement by the state reforms. Inconsistency in national strategy is also one of the important challenges. Next is that is favoritisms and patronage. Political patronage, favoritism in federal grants, also majority rule at the state levels, and inconsistent protections of the minority rights. These are also critics of the federalisms. That is one we call last one. This is also very important critics of the federalism. That is economic disparity. And economic disparity lead to economic competitions, and federalisms can lead to economic competitions between a state, which may result in a race to bottoms as a state lower taxes or reduce regulations to attract business potentials, undermining public service and workers' protections. Next is unequal economic developments. Here I am talking about the unequal economic developments. Some region may lag in unequal economic development due to lacks of resources or investments, creating a long-term economic disparity within the country. Now here I'm going to conclusion part of the summary and critics of the federalism. First is that is the summary. In summary, federalism is a dynamics and adaptable system that seek to balance the needs of diverse populations while maintaining national unity. Its effectiveness depends upon how well the division of power is managed and how conflicts between different level of governments are resolved. These criticisms highlights the challenge that federal system must navigate in the balancing autonomy with unity, efficiency with equality, and local control with national coherence. This is very important parts of the things related to the summary and criticism. Thanks, thanks for hearing the lecture. This is very important part, and this is the end of the things of the uh, related to the chapters.